Welcome back to Spincast, ladies and gentlemen. Keegan once again here, and I am here with Elon University Esports Club. How are you guys doing today?
We're doing quite well.
Very well.
How are you?
I'm not doing too bad myself. It's been a bit rainy here, but you know what? It's Central PA in the summer. That's bound to happen eventually. And I'm sure you guys understand, being based out of North Carolina, just how bad rain and storms can get.
Hasn't stopped.
So tell our viewers a little bit about yourselves, guys, a little bit about the Elon Club Esports at your university. So and introduce yourselves as well. So Connor, if you want to start us off.
All right, I'm Connor SIMPSON. I am the president of Elon Club Esports. I am going to be a senior next year, and I joined 3 years ago to try and help build this program to be an amazing esports community for people. I founded the Rainbow Six Siege team and have been leading it since, and played on the Overwatch team, have casually played Smash Bros with them, and we've grown a ton in the past 3 years, had plenty of new advancements in the university as well as with the collegiate scene as it's grown. Wayne?
I'm the staff advisor. I'm actually a Microsoft engineer here with the university, and I've been the advisor for, I'd say, 6 years now. I've seen a lot of changes in the group since then.
Yeah, I can imagine it's grown a lot since then. And Chris, if you would introduce yourself, please.
Yeah, I'm Chris. I am a rising junior, and I just this past semester joined the esports club when I finally got around to getting a gaming PC. So I joined and quickly found friends among the whole group, and have been playing with these guys nonstop really since. And then at the end of the semester, I decided to throw in an application to be the social media chair, as I kind of have a little bit of experience working with that in professional esports in the past. So I thought I could bring what I've learned there and hopefully advance the club a little bit.
What's your experience with professional esports?
I worked as a community manager with Elevate GG, the organization.
Oh, okay.
So I helped with them for, I want to say, 4 or 5 months in the fall.
Well, that's certainly awesome, and it's good to hear. So you guys have a club esport at the university level. Now, naturally, these club esports and varsity esports that we see being organized differently across the country, they have their own challenges. So if you guys would give us a little bit of like a background on how this club started, and how where you guys started at and where you are at now, so we can see just how far this club has come since it started.
I guess I'll start there since I've been here for like 6 years now. It started prior to 6 years ago, though. There were a handful of students that basically just did gaming in general. And if you guys got informed of any of more information that I am saying here, feel free to interject. But they just had a handful of students who would get together and do gaming in general. And then it broke down into the different teams. I've been trying to get it a program for a while, but there's still some stigma to the esports name, as you probably are well aware of. But we're slowly getting over those obstacles.
Yeah, that's kind of the barrier that we're seeing at a lot of universities, is just finding a way to break that stigma for these board members to actually allow it to become part of the faculty. And it's definitely not easy everywhere. We've seen some places where they're like, yes, let's do this, but other places where they get hard pushback against it. I mean, I've heard of universities where, the faculty was even hesitant to even allow it as a club for whatever reason, because they're like, what does this gain us? And quite frankly, that doesn't seem the right way to go with esports in general. So it's been more than 6 years old. When does it that makes this, I think it would be one of the oldest esports clubs in the country. When did it actually start?
I believe it was in 2009. It's been actually around for quite some time, but it hasn't been active until the last few years. My son was actually the president about 4 years ago. I think it's 4 years. Time flies. Connor may remember him. I'm not sure if he was here, but it's something that's kind of running the family.
I do remember it. He was the president, and then over the summer, we had a massive hit to the club where Elon changed every PC on campus to a Mac and took the Ethernet out of every dorm and most buildings on campus. So that put our club way behind. Our numbers dropped significantly because it was hard to play competitively at that point. And over the past years, the Wi-Fi has improved. We're still begging for Ethernet, and the faculty has grown much more open to supporting us. We've grown a large amount from around maybe 5 or 6 active members once they pulled it out to around 50 now. Multiple
Wow.
teams that run well, and pushing with the faculty to improve this club over the past 3 years has been really eye-opening to how the world sees esports and how much it's changing.
Yeah, that stigma is definitely starting to change. It's what we're seeing all around the country now. More
Yeah.
parents especially are becoming more on board with it.
Yeah.
Faculty are also coming on board with it a lot more, as well as the stigmatization in the rest of the popular culture of students who aren't interested in esports. There's less of a stigma behind it for them too, which is always nice for the esports athletes to have social opportunities and stuff like that. But I touched on it a little bit on how there are a bunch of different challenges between a club esport and a varsity esport. So I asked this question to everybody. Tell me like a day in the life of a member of your club. How do they go about their day, and how is it different from how a traditional student athlete would work their day in?
So I personally am very close with the leader of Northeastern University's Hearthstone team. He founded it and has built it into an A, B, and C team. And they got that to be a varsity sport where he has designated times in their room where they practice. He'll oversee other people's practices, and that becomes the focus of his evening. Of course, we both go about the daily morning and then afternoon of a student where you go to class, you get food, you go to class again, and then you try and get some more food, but you run out of time because the line's too long. And then you go back home and you play a little bit of games, and then you do your homework. And then as a club sport, we still try and have regular practices 2 to 3 times a week. And then we have games generally leaning towards the weekend, sometime one on Wednesday or Thursday. And at night, we just bunker down. We warm up a little bit, hang out with some friends before, get nice and happy and comfortable about it, and then just play and have fun. And at the club level, there's not a ton of us, so we're all really close. Me and Chris both play on the Siege team, and we're a very close-knit group of guys. Over the summer, we've just been playing games together and having fun. And it's been hard because we're so far apart, because after a game, we'd go to Cookout, a great restaurant in North Carolina, open very late, and just hang out afterwards, make it into a good time. Whereas at a varsity level, they have to focus. They're up there trying to win the tournaments and make money for their program. We're trying, but we're aiming to have fun as well.
Mm-hmm.
So if I could touch on this, I think the big thing I kind of noticed between like us as a club esport versus then, varsity level sports and esports is that they have kind of the facilities to be practicing multiple times a day and, getting really good practice together. So that's something I think is different is anything we're doing it for, a lot for fun on our own time, whenever we choose to do it. We're not on a set schedule where it's kind of like we have to work around these practice times and, go to a practice facility to do things. So I think that also causes kind of the big differences in schedule for club and varsity level sports and esports.
Yeah, and we do see that scheduling of that nature, even scheduling practices is really hard to enforce when you're a club. Then there's the additional of how do you enforce like GPA requirements? How do you enforce like nutrition requirements? I've seen a lot of schools that are more along the lines of, hey, you've still got to go exercise, X times a week. You've got to eat right. So how do you guys find difficulties, or do you not find difficulties with that GPA? Study hours, practice enforcement?
I personally haven't had any issues with that. I, this past semester, struggled getting to games on time because the default time was the same time that I finished tutoring for physics. So I would be tutoring physics, and when I didn't have anyone, be working on my own homework, and then run home and get into a game. But that time management is really what sets a club apart from a varsity. Varsity, you're required to. And we're all so close and comfortable with talking to each other about that kind of thing, where if we're struggling, we can just say, hey, I can't play in the game today, or I can't practice today. And we're like, that's fine. And we'll just pull in someone else, even if they don't play as much. Moving into, so our program over the summer has transitioned from just a club at the university to a club sport. And the people in charge of the club sports are very much more focused on nutrition, well-being, and health, and wanting to make sure that us as gamers, we stay healthy, which it helps our reaction time and our gameplay abilities when we are healthy. So going to the gym is something I try and regularly do a few times a week. I try and bring some friends with me because it's always more fun that way. And it keeps you in good shape and good spirits.
Yeah, as a gamer, of course, myself,
Yeah.
I've always noticed that if I'm not eating right, if I'm not getting good enough sleep, if I'm not just generally rounded in other areas of my life, my performance actually drops.
Oh,
So
yeah.
so Wayne, if you could maybe talk on this one a little bit, do you have any influence in how in if there is any sort of enforcement for the GPA requirements, or if there is any sort of enforcement for practice times being limited? Is there any sort of enforcement on your side, or are you kind of leaving up to more of the club community?
Well, being a club sport, it's entirely student-led and run. There are no academic requirements other than that what they set for themselves within their bylaws. And they enforce it, and they do a pretty darn good job at making sure everything gets followed and updated. I would like to see it go towards more of a varsity thing, because then we could offer scholarships and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But that's just maybe a couple of years down the road.
Well, that seems to be the general consensus with most of the clubs is they're starting on moving towards that varsity level as much as possible, because you have the scholarships that can really attract new recruits from high schools, and then you have the ability to have those actual requirements in the GPA. But it does seem like you guys do have a good system that most universities don't have, which is an actual bylaw system that can then be enforced by the club officers for like GPA requirements, practice times, and stuff like that. That's not something that we see very often. So that seems to be something that's rather unique about Elon Esports.
I would say it is. I've seen I've been to a lot of different esports conventions across the country, and the ones that are successful have them. They have some sort of law, some sort of way of accountability. And even though our administration is a little behind when it comes to that, not all of them, mind you, we have some good friends up there in the administration. But even though overall we're a little bit behind on that, we've got a good handle. So when it comes time, we'll be ready.
Well, I'm glad to hear you guys have support up there, at least, because that can definitely be difficult to find. Now, I did touch on this a little bit previously. So again, you're a club sport, so it can be very, very difficult sometimes to get recruiting outreach. And I know that that you could say it doesn't matter to the school all that much if you recruit, but I suspect it matters to you guys because it very much helps you advance your club as a whole, getting in good new members. So how exactly do you guys go about that recruiting side without being able to offer scholarships?
Well, and mostly by accident. We kind of accidentally fell upon a couple of Fortnite players who were pretty highly ranked, and played in a national tournament, and we didn't find out about it until they were doing it, and brought them into the fold. So, but I wish it could be more intentional.
Mm-hmm.
Or not really allowed to really push too much, except for word of mouth.
Yeah, it's been a lot of word of mouth. I've just brought friends into the scene. There's a few people that I know that never even played competitively before, and I just said, hey, this could be fun. Tell your friends about it. If they know anyone, bring them in. And we've just stumbled onto people that are friends of friends that come by and they're like, I enjoy this game, and they come play.
Mm-hmm.
Hopefully, with Chris as our social media manager, we can get even more just publicity around Elon campus.
We're going to try to push it. Push it out there, get the word out.
So I assume that's So I assume that's how you do kind of attract most of your attention is through that social media presence, and being able to attract those high schoolers who are really good at what they do to be able to come up to the university and play for you guys. I assume that's how you attract most of your attention, not just by word of mouth either. Like, do you have any
Yeah.
like, I assume you plug discords and stuff like that, and
Yeah.
yeah, you're probably part of several collegiate communities. So let me ask you another question here. And this is kind of one that's a hot button issue in collegiate esports right now. I'm going to say 4 letters, and you're going to say exactly, and you're going to know exactly what I mean. NCAA. So there's been a ton of talk about the NCAA getting involved in esports. Now, are you guys a member of any of the esports collegiate organizations such as like NACE, Collegiate Star, TESPA? Are you a member of any of those right now?
TESPA we
Currently,
are
no.
now. Aren't we in the middle of TESPA?
We're not in TESPA currently.
We were at one point. We just lost our membership, but we are working on, as part of becoming a club sport, we are working on becoming members of NACE.
Okay.
Kind of big on our outlook.
Yeah, NACE is certainly somewhere that's becoming very popular for that collegiate esports organization. And I guess my real question is, do you feel as though the NCAA would have to step in, or do you feel as though we're already having a good enough job done with the various different governing bodies for collegiate esports that we have, such as NACE, Collegiate Star, and TESPA? Or do you feel, conversely, that it's up to the conferences to decide?
Chris, you want to take that one a little?
Yeah, I mean, it would be cool to have, you know, the NCAA fully behind esports, like collegiate esports. But, you know, from what I've seen in collegiate esports, you've got, when you have like developers supporting games, you can get a pretty big scene going. Like the collegiate Rainbow Six community, they don't have developer like support from the developers yet, but the community-led tournaments have grown to be massive and really good for like the Siege community as a whole. I think if the NCAA stepped in, I would hope that they weren't affecting that community too much to the point where, you know, it could be less of a fun, like playing with everyone around the country sort of deal, you know, that you're playing people focused in your conference and, you know, it's more exclusive, those national tournaments.
Mm-hmm.
I hope to stay away from that.
And barring any politics, developer to developer, I feel like Blizzard has done a decent job with TESPA in maintaining regularity and awareness of their tournaments for the games that they supply. So developers and communities both seem to do well on their own. I've never thought much about the NCAA stepping in just because I feel esports has been its own thing and been growing on its own. So I think we're doing all right as we are, personally.
Now, it would be interesting. One of my friends is playing. He just played in a qualifier for a Rainbow Six Pro League, and he played with 4 people that all went to the same university, played for a college team together, or currently play for a college team together, and they managed to qualify for this pro league. So it'd be interesting to see how the NCAA would step in for students like that who are good enough to qualify for a pro team. Would they still be allowed to compete collegiately? Because it's not like they'd be making the same salaries that a professional athlete might be. So it's a little bit of a feels like a little bit of a different scenario.
Right, and that amateurism argument also wraps in things like streaming. due to how esports is, there are so many opportunities to make money outside of just, you know, playing the game, that it's really hard to police all that, and it's really hard to say what is amateur and what is not. It's like if you play in like some random weekly tournament for some game and you win money, is that still amateur? Is like if you're streaming and making 2K a month from streaming, is that amateur? Is that pro? It's a very difficult line to straddle, and from what we're seeing, a lot of people are on the same lines as you, in that they really don't want the NCAA to come in and kind of start dabbling their fingers in this, because they feel as though that other organizations like NACE, Collegiate Star, and TESPA are already doing a pretty good job of making the esports scene what it is.
They just understand a bit better, I think, than the NCAA might. A bit better, I'd think, than the NCAA might.
So, real quick, let's talk about the competitions that you guys enter. What all teams do you have?
We have currently a Rainbow Six Siege team, an Overwatch team, a League of Legends team. We have a Smash group, which you can't really have teams for Smash Bros. We have individual players
Yeah.
that compete against each other and then play in tournaments.
I mean,
But
you got the 2v2 thing, but
Yeah.
it's that's not really all that big, to be honest.
Usually
in the scene.
secondary to the scene,
Yeah.
We're planning on adding a Rocket League team next year, and there might be a Valorant team in the works now that the game has shown some esports promise.
Heroes.
Heroes of the Storm.
Yeah, I
Would be
love
nice.
that. That's my game.
It's a shame that scene's. It's a shame that game's esports scene is dying because HOTS really had a lot of potential to be a really good esport, but we're not going to go into all the reasons why it's failing because that's an hour-long video of its own. It's a shame that HOTS is failing because, quite frankly, Blizzard had so much collegiate support for that game. They had so many opportunities for the pro league, for the other community members in it. It's just such a shame. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, you have all those teams in there. Where do you primarily compete? Do you find scrims, or do you go to weekly tournaments, or do you encourage these teams to find their own places to play in? How do you find these teams trying to get that intercollegiate competition?
So there's a few discords between CAA members. So people like Drexel, Northeastern, I'm
Hofstra.
blanking right now.
Hofstra.
Hofstra. We play with them and we scrimmage with them sometimes for Rainbow Six. I know they've done it for Overwatch as well. Overwatch just plays in the TESPA tournaments. Sometimes there's a little pop-up tournament that they'll play in. Rainbow Six, we have 3 different choices as of the past year. We have CEA, CR6, and CRSL, and each tournaments offer their own unique way of being a tournament. One of them has an entry fee. One of them has 2 different divisions, one that's invite and one that's open to anyone. And then CRSL had, you have to play in tournaments to qualify to be in the bigger tournament, which I thought was interesting because they each offer their own opportunity for however your team wants to play. So we've, over the course of 3 years, entered in all of them. And this year we were invited to the CRSL tournament because they ended up with 1 extra open spot, and they thought, well, we were the closest and the best team to represent the league, which to us was a huge honor. And then for the League of Legends team, I can't remember.
I mean, League of Legends collegiate scene is just massive right now.
Yeah.
So you guys have a ton of options, I'm sure.
We let them run their own thing based on the team captain and however the team feels they should. And they enter a tournament or 2 each year. And generally, the roster changes every year, so they do well.
I mean, that seems to be a big thing with esports, is that if a roster lasts for 6 whole months, you're extremely lucky.
Oh, yeah.
And that's with all esports. That's not just with some of the more unstable ones. But even at the collegiate scene, that does happen occasionally. But at the collegiate scene, I'd say there's a lot more opportunity for a lot more stability involving the teams, which is really great, honestly, and something that I feel as though professional esports is even lacking. Is that stability in the team? Is this just something unique to your League of Legends team that they're so volatile, or do most of your teams change every year?
Most of our teams change every year. Our League of Legends team in specific, we've had times when we have plenty of time for people to play on it, or other times when someone is graduating or just can't play for a semester and they have to take some time off. So usually there's a member or 2 that stick around to transition into the next year. But with the whole PCs changing to max, Ethernet getting pulled, depending on where you live, even your internet may not be good enough to play competitively. I'm very lucky that I've had 2 people play with me on the Siege team since it started, and then Chris showed, and he's been playing with us ever since then. It's amazing to have people come and go because you get to meet plenty of people, and sometimes people just they want to play a different game. They've gotten tired of it.
Mhm.
Because this isn't a super competitive league for us. We're all still in college. We've got 4 years here. And then if we want to go make more of it, we can. But this is the time when we get to meet each other and have fun.
Mhm. Yeah, and that's definitely one of the better arguments for the kind of more roster changes is that you get to meet more people, you get to
Yeah.
have a better and bigger community, which is one of the biggest positives to a club sport as opposed to a varsity sport. Is that it's more community based rather than organization based. But that's one of the big things and one of the great things about having changing rosters is that you get to meet those people, you get to have more fun, and you get to enjoy what you're doing a little bit more as well.
Yeah.
Do you guys have any rivals?
Yes.
Connor smiled as soon as I said that one.
Our Siege team from 2 years ago has a rival with Cal Poly Pomona. We played them in the quarterfinals for a tournament, and we were seeded 12th in that tournament, and they were seeded, I believe, 4th. And we beat them in both games, the first 2 of the best of 3. And it was a very serious match. And ever since then, we've wanted to play them again. And in 2 years, see how much we've grown and play them again. Chris, I think you had something on your mind too.
I mean, I think it more than not really rivalries, but just kind of personal grudges we may have with some other teams. I know this season we didn't make playoffs for CEA, and a large part of that falls on our first match of the season. We tied in 2 maps to Case Western Reserve, and ever since then, I think all of us have really wanted a shot at revenge there. That we think we've all gotten a lot better since, because that was in my first month or 2 on PC that we played them. So I was still pretty new on the team, and we were still trying to work out some kinks.
My computer was broken.
Yeah, I think we've all gotten a lot better since then and want another shot at them.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's great to hear that you guys have those rivalries because they can really help drive the team in general,
Yeah.
and it's really great to hear. And again, one of the great things about collegiate esports as a whole is that you can have those rivalries in there. Now, we're about to run out of time here, so I want to wrap this up with one final question to you guys, and that is if you're going to give advice to a high schooler or middle school who's heavily involved in esports, and they really love it as their hobby, they're thinking about potentially following it as a career, how would you guys tell them to go about doing that? And specifically involving moving up, following their passions to college.
Mm-hmm. Well,
You're saying they're looking for something in esports.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I think for me, I'd say it's all about just networking, being active in the communities that you want to be involved in. I didn't really start joining any collegiate siege communities until this last semester, but I've kind of quickly found friends among all the scenes or all the discords I've been a part of, and I think it's opening a lot of interesting doors. Next semester, I won't be able to compete in CRSL with the team because I'm joining as a tournament admin, which also includes some opportunities for me to work some esports broadcast production, which can open up some doors for me for future career paths. So I think it's all about honing in a specific aspect of, what you want to do in esports, and then networking through that and finding the right communities to, get more involved in those scenes.
To me, if you're a crazy competitive player and you're trying to be the best of the best, reach out to other people that are playing the same college scene as you. They all want to be the best if they're playing at that high level, and they're more than happy to help. They may have their own team that they play with, but the people, as Chris said, in this college scene are very friendly, especially for Siege. I know Overwatch has a lot of people. We've connected with High Point, and we're planning on doing a LAN with them last semester. And just by meeting other people and working with them and learning what they think about the scene, exactly how they're going to play, you can learn, one, how the other people in the scene play. There's a few strategies or styles that seem to work for many collegiate teams. and just play off of that. And don't get upset if, one, your game's esports scene dies, or two, it's just not working as the game for your school. Because there are plenty of games out there and plenty of teams that would love to have you.
Absolutely.
From an administrative aspect, I would make sure that the university you're looking at has a commitment to the esports team. There are so many avenues from production to media out in what people call the real world. Esports is not just gaming. It's the evolution of sports. Is what I like to call it.
I mean, I can definitely attest to that myself, production manager for various esports organizations. So I can definitely attest that there are other opportunities besides just playing the game. Well, gentlemen, thank you so much for coming out and talking with us today. Tell us and the audience as well where we can find you.
Well, you can find us on Twitter and on Instagram at just Elon Esports, and you can also find links to our Discord if you ever want to hop in. We've got roles for friends of Elon for you guys to come and hang out with us and play games.
All right. Well, thank you, gentlemen, very much for coming out and talking with us today, and thank you all very much for coming and watching Spincast. Just remember, stay happy, stay healthy, and stay plugged in.